Good morning, my friends. Paul here, coming at you with some very interesting and very pertinent information that is not only vindicating but also very relevant to you all and your interest if you're trying to keep up as to what's happening in the crypto space. This is something we covered before, which I'll get into momentarily, but suffice to say, Tether has shed its peg. Well, what does that mean? That means the cryptocurrency that's supposed to be a relatively stable coin with a value of $1 is now valued at 92 cents and dropping fast due to some issues that are surrounding its parent company, Bitfenix. Well, maybe not parent company, but its associate company. We'll get into some of the opaque relations again here momentarily. But first, join me for a simultaneous sip. Can't start the day without some nice coffee. Alright, so like I was saying, we've already covered this before, all the way back in February 7th. Bitfenix, Tether, and Blockstream, more questions than answers. Bitfenix and Tether, a drama like no other, from February 2nd. Another Crypto Coffee update, June 14th. Try to keep it relevant for you guys, keep the information and narrative going there. After all, this is still relevant information, even though it's not as spicy and as exciting as some of the other Lambo Moon stuff going on. And here from BitChute, you could see, I'll link this one specifically in the description. Actually, I'll link them all, but check this one out. Stablecoins not so stable after all. Lets you know that stablecoins, they're not reasonable. Unless you control all vectors of supply and demand, there's no such thing as that level of market stability, as can clearly be seen via Tether. I use the example of a mast that is tethered to a ship, but the ship is sinking. So while the mast may seem stable relative to the overall vessel, well, everything is going down into the water eventually. So that's a good example there. Like I said, I'll put this below in the description, but let's go ahead and jump into the more temporally relevant happenings. Bitfenix banking scare is continuing, Bitfenix premiums skyrocket, and Tether dumps. As said, the Bitcoin premiums on Bitfenix are skyrocketing, and this is something that caused some personal worry for me, not because I'm involved with Bitfenix in any way, shape, nor form. I stay away from it like the plague, but because this is something that happened similar to Mt. Gox. Again, not saying I have crystal ball or I'm going to tell you the future and this is what's going to happen, this is inevitable, but no, rather, this is a similarity that I have noticed between Mt. Gox back in the day and Bitfenix. There are some strange premiums that are happening due to some illiquidity on the actual exchange, which again we'll get into momentarily. But let's go ahead and unpack here what's going on with Bitfenix specifically. They lost their primary banking partner for the upteenth time, something that would, seem strange for any entity, but normally crypto exchanges, they pick up new banking partners here and there to make sure that they have sufficient liquidity and banking options. Well, Bitfenix has been like a hot potato going from bank to bank to bank to bank, and there's no real clear reason exactly why. We're talking banks in places like Panama, Nicaragua, the Netherlands, Poland, etc., Hong Kong, and it's just frankly a bit strange. Let's go ahead and see what this culminated in. This ultimately culminated in a fiat deposit update from October 15th saying, yo, no more fiat deposits or withdrawals. They're temporarily paused because Bitfenix no longer has a banking partner. Their latest bank, Noble Bank, which is based out of either Nicaragua or Panama. It's a lot of information here, guys, so you can check behind me on that one. But suffice to say, a Central American bank is shutting down. They're no longer going to be a bank, which has left Bitfenix in kind of a pickle. They don't have a bank to process these fiat withdrawals and deposits, and as you could see, this is in no small part led to a bit of worry on the part of the user base. It was hypothesized by another news outlet, The Block, from Larry Cermak, saying that, hey, Bitfenix seems to be partnering with HSBC, the 7th largest bank in the world, but they're using a shell account. However, an update to this article showed that, turns out, HSBC as well was playing the game a hot potato, decided we're not dealing with Bitfenix, and probably did so as soon as they found out who this shell account belonged to. After all, in my opinion, it seems really strange that they're using a shell account to begin with, perhaps some subsidiary accounts in order to shield themselves from a lot of potential banking issues and woes, but a shell account has a certain terminological implication that doesn't bode well, just in my opinion. The article also expands that the top brass over at Bitfenix expects the situation to normalize within a week, but let's be honest here, folks, with Bitfenix, is anything ever normal? And I want to go ahead and get into the history behind what is Bitfenix and what is Tether. These two entities, as I said, are intrinsically linked in ways that were previously opaque but have recently come to light more clearly, and I want you guys to be informed in the best way possible. With that said, nothing is ever going to take the place of good old-fashioned doing your own research, guys. You got to do your own research. I'm just a guy here who wants to make the space the best it could possibly be and share information. So please, if you have any alternative information, any corroborating information, or additional information that you know is credible, that you find to be even interesting, even if you think it's a bit off the wall, because sometimes there's a kernel of truth in some interesting information, please leave it below in the comments. It would be very much appreciated, and that's how we build this space to be the best it could possibly be. So let's go ahead and get into the history behind Tether and Bitfenix and what's going on from a historical perspective. Well, Tether was originally founded by Brock Peirce, and it was known as a real coin. It was a dollar-backed cryptocurrency. Cool, same thing. Well, it rebranded as Tether to avoid an altcoin association. Real coin, peer coin, etc., etc. Similar stablecoin projects. Well, they didn't want to be associated with an altcoin. They wanted to be something a bit different. And different they were. After all, for years and years it was said that Bitfinex and Tether, they're separate entities, they work well together, they're friendly, but they are in no way, shape, or form related. Turns out that was a bold-faced lie. You can see here, coming out of 2017, the Paradise Papers, the largest individual leak of offshore tax data in which individual corporations and people alike obfuscate from their tax burden using these kind of interwoven networks of legalese, if you could say that. So yeah, this individual Divasini and Potter, the last names of these two guys, they already established Tether way back in 2014, which to me begs the question, to what extent is Brock Peirce involved with these two individuals as well as the Bitfinex exchange? There's also another individual named Vandervelde, Jean-Luc Vandervelde, who is very opaque. It's very difficult to discern, if he even exists, for instance. He only has 130 connections on LinkedIn, something that's, decidedly low for an individual of his caliber. Suffice to say, this is speculation surrounding these individuals. The only thing we know for sure is the information that's being presented here, and as said, do your own research on that. A bit of background on Brock Peirce. Just as a disclaimer, Brock Peirce was never convicted in court of anything similar to this. This individual at the bottom, Mark Collins Rector, just says Collins Rector there, he was convicted of sexual activity with minors, and he was living in the same location as Brock Peirce. Again, I'm not insinuating anything. Guilt by association is a very slippery slope, so no witch hunts here, guys. Seriously, do your own research on this. Brock was never convicted, but suffice to say, it is a strange association, but again, as I said, guilt by association, slippery slope. Basically, back in the day, Brock Peirce fled to Spain, eventually came back, settled out of court with some accusations surrounding some childhood sexual allegations. Not pretty stuff, guys. And he definitely was involved in producing this weird scripted drama about a young gay boy known as Chad's World. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, again, not trying to insinuate anything one way or the other. This is just information that's out there and the public deserves to know. So that's the individual who we talked about that founded Realcoin, that eventually became Tether and is heavily involved, assumingly, with Bitfinex and Tether as entities. Fast forward to 2016. Basically from this point, from 2014 to 2016, you have Tether is created, Bitfinex is created around 2015. Those two entities are mutually independent and clearly linked. At the time, it's not said that. It's very opaque. Paradise Papers in 2017 come out, boom, now all that comes to light. Well, here we are smack dab in the middle of that timeline, 2016. Bitfinex gets hacked, they get hit hard. The article title here says they don't know what happened. That's because it was dropped the day after. We got a bit more information after the fact. 60 million worth of Bitcoin was stolen, and essentially this works because Bitfinex has their user funds held in individual wallets rather than one aggregate wallet, and they decided to fix this using a bail-in, which means that they socialize the losses. The problem with the individual wallets is that when Bitfinex was hacked, it wasn't 36% of all Bitcoin spread across all wallets. If you were one of the unlucky members who was a member of the 36%, all of your Bitcoin was just gone. You can see here the highlighted portion. Instead of stealing 36% from all customers, they stole the Bitcoin, all of the Bitcoin, from 36% of customers. So they socialized the losses. It was an interesting approach. It begs the question of, maybe ethics and how this kind of thing should be handled, what individuals are signing up for when they sign up for exchanges. But I found it interesting as well that they used the Omni protocol. They had plenty of options at the time. Back in 2016, the Waves protocol was really huge. They had NXT as well, which had launched, probably the most stable at the time. Stratus was still being worked on. That was about to be launched as well. Lisk was coming out. So there were some options, but they chose Omni, which was less popular, less heralded platform, but it's also the platform that Tether was launched on. So perhaps a decision of convenience at a time of duress, but point of the matter being, I just found it an interesting choice. That's neither here nor there. Again, just an interesting observation. One thing that's for certain, though, is Bitfinex was involved with Polish banks. We're moving forward again now from 2016. Bitfinex socialized the losses. Moving through 2017, all seems well and relatively stable. You have these bull runs occurring in mid-2017, late 2017. Tether is assisting with that, printing coins all the way. There's speculation arising as to how Tether actually functions, whether or not it's backed by actual US dollars. And here we are in 2018. We hit 2018. We're going to be talking now about late 2017 to 2018. So things that are more temporally relevant now that you have a bit of background. Bitfinex in Poland, where's the money coming from? Where's the money laundering links? Like I said, Bitfinex went from bank to bank to bank to bank during this time, and they ended up in Poland, where some really strange stuff came down. This is where a lot of eyes were on Tether. People were starting to wonder what's going on, and people were starting to become familiar ever since the Paradise paper leaks. Remember, late 2017, Paradise Papers makes this very apparent. Bitfinex and Tether are the same entity. And boom, out of nowhere, a Polish bank seizes 400 million euros. Keep in mind the recent Danske Bank scandal, where billions, almost a trillion euros were laundered to Russia and other Eastern European countries back and forth, basically wash trading through these kind of banks. This is just a hypothesis, just some conjecture, but nonetheless, it's interesting that such a large amount was seized, and also an amount that was associated with an account owned by a company, Crypto SP ZOO. ZOO in Polish being the LLP designation, essentially, so limited liability company. LLC, excuse me. The parent company was Crypto Capital Corp, registered in Panama, and suffice to say that this ended up being owned in part or in full by Bitfinex. So they were directing customers to this very opaque, strange account that was involved allegedly with money laundering. Now, the trail kind of goes cold here. I'm not sure if federal authorities over in Poland or the European Union are working with the United States or anywhere else to get to the bottom of what's going on here, but suffice to say that one user claimed that they were interviewed by the police due to the fact that they received payment from Bitfinex and the money was originated from this associated account. So just weird stuff. And furthermore, on the actual website, Tether themselves, switching from Bitfinex to Tether, although, like I said, the two entities are the same thing, basically, there's no guarantee that any of this is backed one-to-one. It says on their website that, yeah, it's backed one-to-one by the traditional currency that's held in our reserves. But on the terms of service, it says there is no contractual right or other right or legal claim against us to redeem or exchange your tethers for money. We do not guarantee any right of redemption or exchange of tethers by us for money. So this kind of goes back into the, what's on the surface isn't always what's in the terms and conditions and in the legal contract that you tacitly acquiesce to when you begin to utilize these services. At that point, it becomes explicit acquiescence, and you have basically signed these terms and conditions by utilizing the ecosystem. There's a reason I said previously in this video, guys, that I don't touch Tether or Bitfinex with a 10-foot pole, and this is part of the reason why. So this is from Bloomberg. They've made a little article about, actually it's a pretty substantial article, really well written, about Tether and Bitfinex explaining what's going on. So yeah, I'll link that as well with everything else in the description. You can check that out for yourselves. Suffice to say, there's another individual who's the CEO of Bitfinex, J.L. van der Velde, who identifies himself as Bitfinex CEO, as said, speaks Dutch, English, German, Italian, Chinese. Like I said before, I mentioned him, really opaque individual, hard to discern who he is, if he even exists, or what he does, but he has done a great job of staying out of the spotlight. Very interesting. Really don't have much more to say about him. If anyone has any information about this van der Velde guy, specifically, anyone knows him, has met this guy, I'm really curious about him. Don't want to insinuate anything one way or the other, but like it says here, he is the self-proclaimed and the seemingly verified CEO of Bitfinex. So if anyone knows about this guy, I'd love to just see what's going on. After all, information is power, sharing is caring, and that's what this whole movement is all about, is being transparent with what's going on. I think I'm going to stop this here, and we're going to roll it into a part 2. It's just too much information, guys. Actually, that's a lie. There's no such thing as too much information. There is such a thing, though, as doing your own research. So let me know about this. Let me know what you think. Let me know if we're on track here, if everything is jiving all right. Share any interesting, relevant, even alternative information that may not corroborate this. If you find it to be information that has credulity, please share it below in the comments. I'll see you guys in part 2.